Hi, the topic is going to be how to be highly effective, and I'm focusing on freedom. First and foremost, may the soul of Pope Francis rest in peace. Today is 26th of April 2025, the day Pope Francis was buried. So that marks the history. Freedom comes from God, and it can only be given by God. Divine freedom is what God wants his children to exercise, just as he himself exercised it. He demonstrated it in creation. Nature teaches us that freedom is divine, that God wants us to exercise the same level of freedom he exercises himself. Because without freedom, nothing is done. Without freedom, we don't develop. Without freedom, we can't achieve anything. Without freedom, we can't be human beings. Without freedom, we can't perform like our Father in heaven. So that is why God wants us to exercise the same freedom like himself. So God does not want us to oppress anybody. God does not want us to hold anybody down. He doesn't want us to depress anybody. He doesn't want us to, take control of any other person. He wants each and every one of us to be free and to exercise the same level of freedom he exercises himself. That is why we call freedom as a divine act. So, if you are not exercising, if you don't understand this, then you are likely going to oppress another person. You are likely going to oppress somebody you perceive you are better than, or you are greater than, or whatever something, if you perceive, because nobody is greater than another person. You cannot oppress your own people. You cannot oppress your own wife. You cannot oppress your own husband. You cannot oppress your own children. So that is why we're saying we have to understand what freedom is. Freedom is an act of divine that only comes from God. And God wants us to exercise it the same way he exercises himself. God doesn't want us to be afraid of him. God doesn't want to be scared of him. He wants us to be free as an entity, free as human being, to do the things he expected us to do. So nature teaches us freedom. Even if you look at the way our heart operates, it shows freedom. Look at the trees, they exercise freedom. But it's only a human being who doesn't want to exercise freedom. It's only a human being who wants to take another person's freedom. I always like this quote. It says, "Liberty lives in the hearts and minds of men. When it dies, no constitution, no law can save it." So, liberty, freedom is in the heart and mind of human beings. But once these things are taken away, then that human being becomes useless. Because first and foremost, we have to understand where our heritage comes from. Because if you don't know your heritage, then that means you've limited yourself. Our heritage comes from God. That is why I'm mentioning that freedom is a divine act which only comes from God. So this freedom gives us the heritage. It is where our heritage is attached. That was why the first thing God gave man is image. He gave us his image in Genesis, so that we will exercise divine freedom like him, so that we become like him. He doesn't want us to be suffering, mourning, and killing another person and heading to hell. No. He wants us to live peacefully in freedom and exercise it the way he exercised it. He wants us to, deliver things, take responsibility, and then be accountable. But sadly, we don't want to take responsibility. We don't want to be accountable. And then we don't want to have the freedom. So that is why I'm saying that you have to find out your heritage. Because if your heritage is not from God, then you've limited yourself. Because your strength depends on where your heritage lies. If your heritage is here on earth, then that means you'll be operating at a lower frequency. You'll be operating like somebody who hasn't got information. But behold, you have every information. Behold, you are complete and you lack nothing. So until we understand these principles, the truth about yourself, then you'll be subject to manipulation. You allow the fake prophets, false prophets to deceive you. You become a person moving from one church to the other, going from one crusade to the other, going from one miracle to the other, and you never come to the knowledge of God at all. Because you don't know where your heritage comes from. You don't associate with your heritage. You don't know your roots. Because you are lost. Because you are empty. Because you don't have knowledge. If you are empty, you are lost. Imagine something like something that is empty. That means it flies from one end of the world to the end. And that is what some of the people who are moving from one crusade to another, these are the things they are suffering because they are empty. They don't realize that they can pray for themselves. They don't realize that they can help themselves. They don't realize that God is with them. And they are being deceived. Just like Adam was deceived. Because Adam failed to seek knowledge because he was empty. So that is why I'm saying freedom is a divine thing. God wants us to exercise this freedom like him. He doesn't want you to take another person's freedom. He doesn't like you to, prevent or subjugate another person. He doesn't want you to suppress and oppress another person. So if you are oppressing or conquering another person or stealing their land or carrying a crusade to take over their control, that means you don't have sense of freedom. That means you are lacking God. That means you don't know your heritage. That means you are empty. Look at what we're seeing in the world today. People conquering other people. That's because they're empty. They don't realize that freedom demands that you must allow another person to have his own freedom. Whether he's performing well or not, whether he has the talent or not, he has to exercise his own freedom. Because freedom is in our nature. Because nature teaches us freedom. So we can no longer be in the world where people be oppressing others, where people do not want to seek wisdom, where people do not want to seek knowledge. Because if you don't seek knowledge, you become a threat to other people. Like what we're seeing today. People Islamizing another person. People Christianizing another person. Not allowing him to make informed choices. People forcing other people into a particular level. People taking other people into captivity. That is what we're saying, that you have to understand things. That's what we're saying, that the world has to move away from this kind of stupidity. Because we are children of God. Because God wants us to exercise freedom. Nature teaches us that. If you don't read the Bible, nature teaches you. You can see it in the tree, you can see it in your own heart. So these things are very, very important. So, because if you don't understand this, then how do you understand the truth? What is the truth? So a human being has to seek the truth. And the truth is something incontrovertible. You cannot disprove it. There is evidence about it. You can see it in everything in nature. So why don't we like the truth? Why don't we know that the truth is the ultimate thing? The truth liberates us. The truth frees us. The truth helps us to resurrect. The truth you know about yourself, liberates you and free you from the bondage. The bondage is in the mind. It's because everybody is being oppressed in the mind because of what you learn from your parents, what you learn from the school, from what you learn from the environment. Then they oppress your mind. And once the mind is oppressed, then what you see outside is the footprint of this oppression. So that is why, first and foremost, you have to free yourself. Because it is in your mind that this freedom is not reigning. If the freedom reigns in your mind, you will not oppress another person. If the freedom is not in your mind, you will not steal. You will not covet. You will not do all the things we are doing because you know you already have it. It is the bondage is in your mind because you refuse to seek the truth. You refuse to understand what God is talking about. At this day and age, people are still conquering other people. People are still running over other people. People are still stealing what does not belong to them. Because they don't realize what they're doing. Because they don't seek knowledge. Because the knowledge you have will liberate you from people's criticism. It liberates you from following people like sheep without shepherd. Because we don't know the truth about ourselves, then we are being manipulated. We are being deceived. So each and every one of us is your responsibility to seek the truth about yourself. Know where you stand. Know your value. Understand your value. Your values are those things you cannot change. They are landmarks. They do not shift. You don't not operate them. You do not go there. These are your values. Do we actually have values? Do we actually try to understand what our values are? Without principles and values, then we are empty. That is why we move from one party, political party, to another. We move from one religion to another. We move from one place to another, keep on wandering, and we never, come to the true knowledge of things. Because we do not seek knowledge. And God said, my people perish for lack of knowledge. So if I were you, the first thing I would seek is knowledge. Because when you seek knowledge, you free yourself. When you seek knowledge, you are no longer afraid of anything. When you seek knowledge, you are no longer dependent on people. Because if you are dependent on people, that means you don't know you don't understand what is going on. The knowledge is there. The light of God is already inside of you. The light of God is already available to guide you to understand these things. Instead of chasing miracle, instead of chasing, bread, pieces of bread, things that are dropping from the table. How can somebody who owns the whole thing is now begging? How did this thing happen? It's because we don't seek knowledge. Because once you don't seek knowledge, that means you start committing sin. And once you start committing sin, you have what we call forgetfulness. Forgetfulness is whereby everything in your brain is wiped out. You don't remember anybody. You don't remember where you came from. You don't remember your father. You don't remember your mother. You don't remember your brothers. You don't remember anything. Everything is wiped out. And that is the position we are today. Because we didn't seek knowledge. Therefore, we sin, and forgetfulness invaded our brain. That makes a human being not to understand who he is. That makes a human being not to understand his heritages from God. That makes it not for people not to understand that they are complete and they lack nothing. It's written everywhere. But yet, this forgetfulness becomes our home. How often, how long are we going to keep on talking this? For 5,000 years. 5,000 years, this thing is being spoken to from one generation to other. Yet nobody is understanding. Today, Pope is dead now. Now, Pope has died. Did Pope go with any wealth? No. Did Pope go with anything? No. That's it. So, if he had, taken his privilege above his value, that is a judgment for him and a judgment for God. So, if you choose privilege above your value, whatever you perceive to be worth will be taken away from you. Just like Pope now. Pope has nothing again. He's just empty. Everything is gone. The only thing that he will possess is the truth. So if he didn't say the truth, everything is lost. That's why we're being deceived. We are being hoodwinked to think, well, we're the worth. But at the end of the day, worth is placed on this side, the truth is placed on this side. So you better take the truth. With the truth, you get the worth. And the worth is everlasting. And the worth the devil will give you is a fake one, which is not everlasting. So why are we not making the right choices? Why is it difficult for us to separate goat from sheep? Why is it difficult to separate a female from male? In fact, some courts spent 5 years debating, is this a male, is this a female? Come on. Even a child born today knows the difference. But an educated human being who he says is enlightened doesn't know the difference between male and female. So that is that forgetfulness I'm talking about. Because forgetfulness will now come in such a way that you won't remember that you're a child of God. You won't remember that you came from the mind of God. You won't remember the assignment God gave you. You won't remember that you should love. You won't remember that you should have faith. You won't remember that, that you should be consistent. You won't remember that you should have deep commitment to what you're doing. All the values that are heavenly, that are heritage, we lost them completely. And we end up moving we end up becoming wanderers, miracle chasers, going from one church to the other. So, that is the story of man. How we lost everything because of stupidity, because we don't seek knowledge. A wise man, the first thing he seeks is knowledge. Knowledge of the truth. Because that knowledge of the truth will free you from the grave people have placed you. It will free you from ignorance. It will free you from being oppressed. It will free you from being depressed. Some people are depressed. It will free you from leadership of people. It will free you from liberty, control of your husband and wife. It will also free you from your children. Because you know what to do. Each time you know what to do. You know the actions, you know the decisions you should take. Not taking decisions blindly. You will see the evidence, you will see the substance, and still you won't be able to take the decision. You don't know the difference between good and right. Something might be good, but it's not right. So if you put good and right thing in the scale, which one are you going to choose? You will choose what is good and leave what is right. So it's high time we started discovering what God wants us to do here. God wants us to change the political landscape of this earth. God wants us to exercise divine freedom. God wants us to enjoy the liberty He is enjoying. He doesn't want us to be moaning, crying. He doesn't want us to be angry, envious. He doesn't want us to suffer. He doesn't want us to be in poverty. He doesn't want us to move from one church to the other and we never come to the true knowledge of God. Ever pursuing God, but you never come to the true knowledge of it. You don't seem to understand that the whole power in the universe is with you. You don't seem to understand that you have everything. Yet, you are not contented. You are like a dog that's carrying a bone, and when he goes near water, he saws an image of it and then drops it and then starts backing on the mirage because of greed. How does greed come? It comes from somebody not seeking knowledge. Because if you have knowledge, you know that you have everything. If you have knowledge, you know that you can help yourself. So, why are we not seeking knowledge? You have a book, the Bible, you don't open it. You have preachers, you have some people preaching on the social media, you don't listen. You don't develop yourself. You don't add any value to yourself. Because you don't want to take responsibility. Because responsibility demands you seek knowledge. Responsibility demands that you get organized. Responsibility demands that you work hard. Responsibility demands that you have to be committed to what you want to do. Because you want to get everything free. You don't want to labor. You want it immediately. You don't understand that patience is the king in life. You just want they born you now. Today you become a billionaire. Today you become an adult. You don't want to go through a process. Some of us don't see challenge as opportunity. We see it as something we have to mourn. Oh, that woman now. Oh, this is too difficult. Oh, I can't do anything. These things are process because God cannot use you until He has allowed you to go through a process. Testing. God cannot trust you unless He has tested you. ask yourself, if you want to build a bridge or you want to construct a design or build an aeroplane, you have to test the metal to see whether they can withstand the winds and the storms that goes in the sky. Do you just pick any material and decide it and use it, you want to use it to build an aircraft? You test the material to see how strong the material is, to see if you can withstand the pressure that you're going to face. It's the same thing God does to us. God has to test you to see if you actually you take exam. Exam is to help you to understand whether you actually understood something. Nobody will choose you. Nobody will ask you to go and do a great thing if you've not been tested. God does not trust anything he doesn't test. Jesus Christ, who is God the Father, demonstrated it. He was tested in the wilderness where he fasted 40 days and 40 nights. So when you are going through your own test, why are you mourning? Why do you call it a sin? Why do you call it a curse? Because if you don't test the material, it goes up, it explodes. It caves in. The same way, if you have a child, you want him to do, you have to trust him. You have to allow him to go through a test to see if he can withstand it, to see if he can budge in. No father will allow his child to go through without being tested. Otherwise, he's going to mismanage the whole money. Otherwise, it's going to cause you a lot of problems. So when the test comes on, we cry wolf, we're back at the moon. Look at what we are seeing in Nigeria today. Politicians are not tested. So when the vagaries and the twist and turn comes in, the politician leaves it and goes to another place and become from PDP to whatever party they want to form, moving from one party to the other. These are men who are not tested, who have not didn't go through a process. They don't know that the process is the most important thing. Look at our election. People didn't go vote. No process. So how do you think the person will show accountability or show responsibility? I'm asking you, if you want to build something now, don't you test the material? Nobody. When it comes to that, you know you have to test the material. So then when God wants to use you, then you don't want him to test you to see if you're angry, to see whether you can contain this organization that comes with leadership. So a word is enough for the wise. Thank you.